what I want to do. Okay, all right. Okay, so thanks for making time to be here. Really happy to talk to you about Day of the Dead in Oaxaca. So normally we call it Oaxaca, but that X in Spanish is not indigenous to the Spanish language. It actually comes from the Nahuatl people who sort of live in southern Mexico, Guatemala as well. So when you see the X, it is often a sh, not a h. So Oaxaca would be like the native. Why Oaxaca for Dia de los Muertos? That seems to be like one of the earliest places, and in some ways like the epicenter of, I don't want to say like most authentic, because that's a little bit disingenuous and unfair, right? But that seems to be one of the places where indigenous people groups in Mexico began that celebration, and it sort of is like the heart in some ways of a way of experiencing Dia de los Muertos, which is the Day of the Dead, right? That begins on October the 28th, and it goes through November the 2nd. So I'll share a little bit about like my trip and things that I saw in the city. And like, if you're ever bored, just say like, I'm bored. Could you talk about something different? Or like, hey, I've got this burning question about that, and I'd love it if you would address it, and be happy to do that. Because looking at other people's travel slides, yeah, well, anyway, can be what it is. So I'll just try to make it a little informative. Maybe I'll tell you at the beginning, I went with National Geographic Tours, which they run through a company called G Adventures, and they offer a lot of National Geographic, which is supposed to be like a higher level of touring standard that you can do. Like I said, through G Adventures, they offer a number of them in South America. Normally, I would just go on my own, but the reason I went with them is because I wanted to make sure I sort of didn't miss some of the celebrations. Like normally I would feel really fine. And also it was my first time going down to southern Mexico. And I just want to say, if you haven't been at the outset, felt incredibly safe and was very surprised, having lived in San Diego and been to Tijuana and Ensenada, with the cleanliness. Like people were sweeping, cleaning every single day, and just the guest friendliness of the place. And to give you a little more of the setting, Oaxaca is both a region in Mexico, and the capital city is Oaxaca City. Usually about 100,000 people live there, and they have 23 Michelin star restaurants, like which Houston doesn't have that quantity, right? So it's not necessarily an inexpensive place. If you want to go high end, you can go high end, but Michelin star restaurants aren't necessarily expensive. They're just reliably very good. And I'll show you a few food pictures and talk a little bit about kind of some of that experience in a second. Probably what you're used to, and this was great, right? I essentially stayed in a hotel that was in the center, the Zocalo of Oaxaca City. And I'm just going to say it was a 5-day party, and I'm not a party person. I go to bed at 8 o'clock, so I needed earplugs. All day and all night, there's like an incredible amount of decorations. Don't think mariachi band. Think like high school marching band with like, at one point I counted like 9 sousaphones in a band, right? That's like the tuba you can march with. And that's a lot of sousaphones. I mean, like a lot. So constantly there'll be spontaneous parades through the street, sort of welcoming the idea that, and this is the day which happened to fall on Halloween, whether you were in Germany or Ireland, but also right in Mexico, that this is like a thin time between the spirits of the departed and the spirits of the living. So in some ways, it's not just indigenous Mexico, right? That's in a European heritage as well. And used to be that the indigenous people would literally dig up the bones of their ancestors, like the skull and put that on an altar. And when the Spaniards got there, they were like, no, 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 that's not right. So this is where the sugar skulls or the ceramic skulls come from, is a substitute to literally digging up their ancestors, right? So, prior to Cortez and Pizarro, you dug up grandma and you dug up great-great-grandma on the Day of the Dead, and you would put their skull or their bones on what's called an ofrenda, which just means offering, right? But it's essentially an altar. And on the ofrenda, you would put a few different things. Always like a marigold, because that's sort of this bright orange color. And supposedly that helps the spirits see where to come. Like it's so bright that it like beckons to them. And on the ofrenda, you would also maybe put some photos of the departed. I mean, obviously that's new, right? But pre cameras, you would maybe put like a portrait. You would certainly put food and drink that the person enjoyed, as a way of sort of inviting them and bringing them back. And you would do that in both the cemetery, right, to get them to the cemetery, but you would also do it at home because you want them to come to your house, like the traditional family house. And a few other things that you would do. I don't know if you can smell this. This is copal. It's a particular tree, same tree that's used to make sort of the spirit guides over here. If you want to see one of those, it's made out of copal. So this is the resin from the copal tree, and the whole city of Oaxaca smells like that, which I happen to really like. But for all 5 days of Dia de los Muertos, like you can't get away from that smell. It's everywhere. And in some ways, it's like thicker than others. You'll see marigolds and a few chrysanthemums like all over the place. People are really interested during this time in, I don't want to say mind altering, but like allowing themselves to be open to a reality that in some ways like defies regular perception. So mezcal is like regularly consumed. I'll talk about how that's made in just a second if you want, how that's different from tequila. Supposedly, I didn't see this, but supposedly there's also a lot of mushroom use, like magic mushrooms during the Day of the Dead, as a way, again, of like being open to things that your senses don't perceive, realities of your ancestors sort of visiting. So that's kind of the general frame. There in Oaxaca, you'll see like lots of ofrendas that are public, but again, the real celebration happens in your home. So like it's kind of like partially is for show, and then partially the visit comes in your home. So welcome to the hotel. Here's a painted skull. Maybe you don't care about seeing my hotel. This is what a Catholic church would look like right before Day of the Dead, which we call All Hallows and All Hallows Eve. I hope you can see just like after the Day of the Dead, all of that's gone. So part of what the church has done, the word is syncretism, S-Y-N-C, syncretism. Anytime you meet a foreign culture and they're doing something meaningful that would be really hard for you to erase culturally, but also you start to realize, oh, like that's something we don't have in our tradition. Let's baptize it. That would be the Christian response, right? This is what the Catholics did. I mean, so missionaries did not try to say to the indigenous peoples, that's pagan and wrong. They said, oh, that's All Saints Day. That's All Souls Day. We do that. So except for the digging of the bone. So don't, what's interesting about that, right, is that Catholics weren't excited about that. But there are some chapels in Spain that are completely made of bones of monks. Same in Portugal. You can see that in Paris as well, and Rome, and catacombs, right? So it's weird that they were against it. I mean, so there's limits to everything. Maybe that's the thing to say. And the limit depends on probably who your priest is. Okay, I went to a textile museum, so you're seeing some traditional textile. These are typically made by women. These are called hupillos, and yeah, they're really square, and no one wears that anymore, just to be clear, right? I mean, when you got a Michelin star restaurant, you're not wearing that unless it's part of the show. Maybe you don't care about textiles, and if you do, you got to see them. What's that?
Keep going.
Great. Okay, now you're starting to see some of the very public displays. So again, this is what's great about this city, which is several square miles. I mean, it's probably like 4 square miles. And I was probably averaging 30,000 steps a day because that's all I did. When I go on vacation, this is what I do. Like I shop till I drop and then I come home tired. But these are the kinds of things that are meant to invite the spirits of the ancestors, right? So you're seeing the marigolds, you're seeing the chrysanthemums. Here's a skull shape, right? And then you've kind of got this very playful bones because they're not afraid of death. I mean, I think that is the thing that's probably intriguing to Americans because I think we are. And I think they're not. and that's the interesting like real takeaway from this. Here's like a standard in every country, every tradition. So it's maybe good to know that there's like 75 different indigenous groups in Mexico. And there are 68 different languages. So not just Spanish, there's like Nahuatl and Mixtec and right. Some people still speak the Mayan language. Most of those, so like 65 of the 68 are in Oaxaca and Chiapas, the 2 southernmost territories, if that makes sense, right? And all of them have a slightly different tradition. Like I couldn't tell you how the Guatemalan ofrenda is different from the Mixtec ofrenda, but they look a little different, right? A lot of things you'll see are these little paper cutouts, which work kind of like, what do you know, prayer flags. And they sort of wave in the wind to help guide the spirits of the ancestors to you. So there's not this sense that dead ancestors are omniscient. Like they still need guidance and welcome. Yeah.
Question you mentioned was that ofrenda in a home?
This one was in a church.
Okay.
So this is a public one, even though you can see like there are some specific people here, right? And right outside the church, right, you can see they've strung all of these flags, which you could say, those are prayer flags, but let's just keep in mind, right, they weren't. So this is a kind of syncretism. And you'll find these kind of displays all over the town in Oaxaca. Now, Oaxaca is a colonial city, right? So like people lived there before, but after Cortez and Pizarro did Pizarro really shouldn't have any credit. Cortez shouldn't either. But when the Spanish came and committed genocide against the people, they built imperial cities like you would see in imperial Spain. And if you've not been to a colonial Spanish city before, they're pretty cool, actually, because they're all built in grids. Homes are built like there's like a atrium in the middle, always. And then they're built around that in a square. So anytime you go into a store, you're probably going to enter the arcade and the store might be in any of the 3. This is a museum that I went to, but all over the city, and I think Herb said this is true in colonial Spain as well, right? You have this kind of floor plan, squares that open out into rooms. Does that sound right?
I don't.
Okay, I thought you told me that you had. Okay. Oaxaca has some really interesting, it's about 6,000 feet. So it's cooler, it's drier. And like these cacti are like 70 feet tall. And so right outside of the main cathedral, they have a botanical garden that you used to be able to roam whenever you wanted. Unfortunately, people committed some, probably tourists, sadly, vandalized and killed some of these plants. So you can have some tour. I'll show you from the tour of some of the richness of the botanicals in that garden. And of course, while I was there, we were able to look at, they have some, sometimes you'll go to what we would call a ruin or an ancestral city. This came from Monte Alban, which is kind of like the Chichen Itza of Oaxaca, right? So huge city. And in the graves, right, they brought the artifacts and put them in a museum instead of just leaving them at the site, if that makes sense. So that's in the cathedral that you can pay and enter the museum. And this is like a bone that's been carved, and it's like this big. The intricacy of the carving is really, really interesting, right? Particularly, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but like there was this myth that American peoples had no culture and they had no science, and Europeans were like so much better off. But like this is like more than 1,000 years old, and the minute detail, I just found it really impressive. And also like the art form itself is just very, very different from European art. Yeah. Trying to remember if it's a human bone. It might be.
Do you see them, they bones to do one of their carvings?
The Maori do.
I was curious about the mountains in the picture before. Are those the Sierra Madres?
I think so.
They have any like ziggurat type pyramid structure?
Absolutely. And I'll show you those from Monte Alban because I went there outside of the city. It's like 10 miles away. And I'll talk about it when I get there. Some interesting things that they do. This is like this fermented corn and chocolate drink. And you can kind of see it's like real foamy. So they ferment. I thought it was really delightful. I could have brought some today, but I didn't. I bought some and I haven't even opened it yet. They also make it on a piñon, which is like pine nuts, and they mix that with chocolate and fermented corn. And it's supposed to be like this sort of Mayan or Mixtecan ambrosia. Like it's meant to be like extremely healthy, and it's like the drink of the gods. I just thought it was really tasty.
May I ask when you took this trip?
Yeah, so it's always Day of the Dead is always October 28th through November 2nd. And that's when I went.
Last year.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. They have one other really big festival in Oaxaca, which is like a dance festival. So these are the two times people like pour into the city. And I want to say that if you tried to book this trip now, you might better hurry because it'll be sold out by the end of February. So I was in a group of 16, and the National Geographic ones have groups of 16 only. Very light. I mean, this may be worth seeing this. Like Monte Alban was like, you paid extra to do that, and then free time to explore. So we went to a workshop, we went to a cemetery, we went to a visit for like an hour, lots and lots of free time. That's where I was logging all of those steps, if that makes sense. So like maybe 3 hours of the day were programmed, and the rest was like, do whatever you want, which is why I say I felt extremely safe, and not just as a man, like I would feel safe with Emery walking around in Oaxaca. And I don't think I'm an incompetent parent. So again, you can kind of see, we went to a parade, that was at evening, but that was not until like 7 o'clock. So lots and lots of free time. And unlike other tourist places I've been, almost every tourist shop is a museum or an art store, not a, like, things were not made in China, they were made locally, if that makes
Not a concession.
not a concession, yeah. Okay, I think that was a video and it's not working, and that's okay. Couple of the colonial cathedrals, right? So it's this real interesting mix of colonial and indigenous, and maybe has anybody been to Xochi on Discovery Green? It's a Hugo Ortiz restaurant. The Chronicle called it the best restaurant in Houston for like 7 years in a row. Anybody been there? Xochi? But remember, the X is a sh. If you want to taste Oaxaca, Hugo Ortiz is a Oaxacan. He owns Hugo's, Caracol. These are good restaurants. The one on Discovery Green is like $25 a person. So I don't think it's awful. The star of the Oaxacan cuisine, though, is called mole, which is a Nahuatl word that means sauce. So mole just means sauce, and there are like 7 of them. And this is like probably the most famous is like the black one, which has chocolate in it. And then there are some like that are green, and there's one made of ants, and there are bugs eaten. That's the thing people do, right? Yep, there's some black mole on some chicken, I believe. And of course, a little bit of like hominy and pozole there as well. Okay, this is kind of like what stores do to dress themselves up. You'll see a lot of these. Has anybody seen Coco? It's actually reasonably decent. Dante is one of 2 indigenous Mexican dogs called the Xoloquintle, which is a hairless dog. You don't see them very often, and like they're kind of ugly, but artistically they look great. They get sunburned because they don't have any hair, right? And so like their skin is kind of like a rhino skin, like it's not really fun to pet. But you'll see a lot of xoloquintles. You'll see a lot of skulls, which are not like you're going to die. It's, well, you are, but that's not such a bad thing. I mean, this is just like circle of life. So you'll see that kind of all over the place. And one thing that I really appreciated about Oaxaca is just seeing how many murals there are. So if you saw it on Facebook, you're going to see 100 murals in the presentation. I'm not going to linger super long over them, right? But this is what the city looks like. I mean, you really can't go more than a block or two without seeing murals. And some of them are painted just for Dia de los Muertos. And then like they may pull them down or they may paint back over them. I'm sure some of them live there all year because, I mean, that level of painting is really high painting. I don't know how familiar you are with mural art, but you'll see some that are like, oh, maybe that high schooler made that. And you'll see some that are like professional, absolutely. Adele?
Well, my question was that related to the tourism, were those decorations that year round or just for the festival?
I mean, I can't say because I was only there during the festival, but I'm suspicious they leave them. I mean, this is like, Oaxaca has really become a tourist hub, especially for the cuisine, but it is so associated with Dia de los Muertos that probably there are places offering DDM stuff like all year round, because that's the tourist appetite, if that makes sense. There are some barrios, like this is a particular barrio that's known for its murals. And like, I thought I'd seen them all, and oddly enough, like I went back and I'd missed like 3/4 of them. So like it's, I don't know when you're done, other than when your feet give out. Curious thing that there are these, another real interesting style of art in Oaxaca, and I brought this one that I bought that I really like. This isn't a painting, it's a block print.
Wow.
So that means like somebody gets on like imagine like a clipboard, you know, that kind of laminate material, and they carve, and then they put ink on it, and then they press it. Every color on this is a different pressing. So like the artist who made this spent a month on it, and I think he ended up making like 100 of these, but I think this was like the poster of the year, this year, right? And what you can see, right, is the kids got the pan de muerto, which is like a particular kind of bread. It's got a little bit of like orange rind and anise in it. It's a little sweet. So it's like offering that out. And of course you can see the ofrenda in the back, absolutely covered with the marigolds, and there's the chrysanthemums. And you've got sort of the different skulls, all dressed in like regular working people's clothes, because that's like what his family's people did. They worked. These are block prints that are like extremely political, that people make like stickers of, and just randomly, like in the middle of the night, will like glue to a wall. And they're just like wild political protests.
Yeah, I've heard that they're very, very passionate about politics there, and you don't want to visit there when there's something political going on, because they're all out in the streets.
I mean, I don't want to, I didn't talk about this in the sermon because I don't really know what to say, but I'm not convinced I'd want to be there today. It's probably something being said about Venezuela.
Well,
but
isn't this kind of endemic to that part of Mexico?
I think so.
southern part?
I think so.
In Chiapas.
yes, and I haven't been to Chiapas, which is a little sad, right? But the Chiapas and Oaxaca are the two places that can grow coffee in Mexico, the only two places in Mexico, because you need the altitude and that heat, right, to keep to make it work. I don't know the political commentary on these, but I just was fascinated to take this. A lot of them are three-dimensional, right? Buildings will have these 3D sort of skulls, and okay, right? Political. This is probably the main street coming off the city center, and you can see a couple of the spirit guides. I'll pass this one. I'm going to warn you that the wings can come off. And just to give you an idea, like if you look at this, and I'll show you the workshop, like the detail is quite impressive. And this is hand done, like I can't paint this intricately. So like you see these things, you're like, oh, that must have been a cheap, they're not cheap. They're not cheap. So be gentle with my little spirit guide, which by the way, this is Quetzalcoatl. It is, yeah, it is. So I'll pass it if you want. The wings come out, right? And you'll notice it's light, but it's made of copal, the same tree that you're smelling, hopefully the incense of, unless you're allergic to it. I don't think you are, though. It's a real product. It's not fake.
And this is painted.
That's hand painted, hand carved and hand painted. I'll show you some scenes of some others and like the workshop that kind of made them here. I did go to a mole making workshop. So this is what's in mole. It takes like 2 hours to make it, and then you have to let it sit for like at least a week for the flavors to blend and oxidize. And every family has their own recipe, but you can see stuff like garlic and oregano and almonds and cinnamon and bay leaf and ginger, right? Like so, and then chocolate usually goes in at the end, and ancho chilies and all of that, right? And you grind it. It's not a molcajete. It's like a volcanic with a volcanic rolling pin. And they said that they would hire me to do it out of the 16 because a lot of people weren't great at it, but I wouldn't want that job. I mean, it's really hard to just, there you can see it, right? So that's made out of basalt, and there's your rolling pin, and then you would put it on there to bake, and here's where you would make your tortillas, and of course that's like ceramic with a little fire underneath it. So that was how we spent one morning. There's our friend making the tortillas there. And while we were there, you know, if you ever went like on a curated trip, they're like, and while you're here, let's go to look at traditional Oaxacan weaving. And sort of they showed you how colors are made, which is really interesting. Like there's this particular berry that makes yeah, careful with those wings. Maybe let's pull them out because, yeah, I'd like to keep Quetzalcoatl alive. When you smash the berry, it's red. When you add baking soda to it, it turns purple. And when you add something else, it turns orange. And apparently, this is like how Europeans figured out how to make actual red dye. They got it from the New World, not from the Old World. So like true crimson, you're not going to get that from boiling a beet. It's going to be brown, right? So when all things are like dyes are made from plants and there's nothing artificial, this particular bug, this was the key to true red in the Old World.
So there is a lot of chemistry.
There's a lot of chemistry that you can smash a bug and put a couple different compounds and change the colors 4 or 5 different times, right?
Did you get any sense of how that came to be?
I didn't. I didn't, but I do get that like when all of these are natural and not artificial, it's impressive, right? And you know, when you take a marigold, that's where you get that bright yellow from, right? So weaving is a strong industry.
People have a bias towards beauty, and most civilization, you know, has been trying to recreate beautiful things. I mean, that's just what we're drawn to. We're inherently creative, and so my guess is that that's just the impulse of culture, is to make beautiful things. So things that are pleasing to the eye. And so, you know, when you know, that there's a motivation to create red, you know?
Yeah, and I'd say beyond that too, is there's not like a hampering of, oh, that's too bright. Which I think like we're making this turn in the US anyway, that like color is to be embraced, not to be feared. In my own generation, I'm seeing that change. Like I grew up and all the walls in the house were white. And I don't think that's the case now. And that's probably because of globalization, and we don't need to be afraid of color. I could be wrong, but that's kind of what I think.
We mentioned that even today, the chemists know the least stable colors are always red.
Yeah.
They have trouble with it.
Yeah, actually, the hardest color dye your hair is red as well.
Buy red furniture out,
Yeah.
fabric, it'll fade in a year.
Yeah, and red hair dye is the hardest.
And red is hard to paint over.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible.
Curious if the spirals on
His teeth,
teeth are similar, same meaning as the koru in New Zealand, that represents life unfolding. or-
it's possible. I don't know. I didn't get an itemized description of Quetzalcoatl. I actually bought him from a market, not from the workshop that we went to, mainly because the workshop was cost prohibitive. Quetzalcoatl was still expensive. Emery was like, I want one with wings. And I was like, I don't know. But anyway, I found Quetzalcoatl. Seemed good. Oaxacan chocolate is pretty famous. Oaxacans do something really interesting in general whether they're eating bars or putting in a mole, like they did not use leche. And still traditional, when you make a hot chocolate in Oaxaca, that's going to be water-based, not milk-based. Dairy came with the Spaniards. I mean, I guess you can milk a llama or an alpaca, but that's what they had, right? The Spaniards brought in the bovines, right? They're not indigenous, right? This is one of the places where the cacao beans grow, and this particular place, Mayordomo, is like the place to go. And they put the cacao in the top of this machine that kind of heats and grinds it. And then you can decide how much sugar you want them to add, how much almonds, how much cinnamon, right? Because that's like Mexican hot chocolate has cinnamon in it. Sometimes in the States, they'll add chili. I did not find that to be the case in Oaxaca, that they were adding chili to it. But it comes out hot, like in a bag. And then, by the next day, it's cooled off into a hard lump. And then you just add that to boiling water, or if you choose to add it to hot milk, that's what you would do. And if you've had like Mexican chocolate as a bar, because it doesn't have dairy in it, it's very different on the palate from Lindt or something, something like that. It's just different. Okay, a few more different ofrendas. Some have like a religious scene in there as well, right? So you can see the mix, right, of the ofrenda, and then there's Jesus there in the back. Murals being painted, so you could walk down and see that happening in real time.
So this is an artist compound, like San Miguel de Allende?
The whole city feels like this, though.
Okay.
So not everybody is an artist, but they seem like there are enough tourists and enough indigenous value in this that it's sort of supported and all over the place, right? Again, I can't differentiate between ofrendas, but you'll just see a bunch of different ones. Okay, so there are parades, and sometimes they're planned and sometimes they're spontaneous, and they do begin on October the 28th. That's always when you celebrate departed children, like children who have died prematurely. And you'll see vibrant costumes, you'll see different colors, and just kind of like a band shows up and people march for a while, and then like they go to the next one, or they go to dinner, or they just go home. Often they're carrying banners, right? Sometimes they've got the skull makeup, and believe me, there are plenty of people on the street offering skull makeup, some better than others. This is like a restaurant, right? So like, again, this is for the time they're doing all this kind of decoration, which is incredibly festive. Several groups had these kind of like globe things. And there you can see the sousaphone, right? That band only seemed to have one.
During this time, did you say that? How many people on average descended on the region?
Oh, it probably like 400,000. So you're thinking the city times 4. And again, hotels book out, like National Geographic books the whole hotel I was staying in, and that doesn't accommodate all of their groups. And they book it like perpetually, and then they backfill it. So that was another reason I went with them instead of going. I just wasn't really quite sure where I wanted to stay. A lot of sand art gets made as well. And of course, like come November 2nd or 3rd, this will get swept up. but this is like a sand painting. These ones are out in front of a church, although you can also find them like in the city square, where you can find these like huge ofrendas as well. Sorry, my videos aren't showing, and that's okay. They're just videos of parades where you
One
can,
more question about tradition.
please.
You talked about, the ofrendas in the home is, when I went to, my one and only, Dia de los Muertos, it was in San Miguel, it was in 1990. And I never got any sense about the home. Everything, the families all went to the cemeteries. That's still a part of the tradition.
Absolutely.
And
And
manicure it.
that's kind of where I'll end, is with a cemetery, but at least in this part, right, you go to the cemetery. And that's where there are like the sort of the literal remains, but you're really trying to invite people into the home. So that could vary by location. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know what I didn't want to take a photo of. So poor Becky still got a million of these photos.
Have you visited any other colonial cities or just?
Just Oaxaca, yeah.
So you talked about European tradition and the Mexican tradition, but also,
There's Obama, by the way.
but
You'll see Trump in a minute.
Egyptians also had a tradition, as far as like the bones go, they would bring the mummies to the table to dine with them.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know that Peruvians also mummified, like in a similar to Egyptians. So mummies in Egypt, mummies in Peru, and that they would carry the mummies of their former emperors or family members around on particular days. Yeah. This is Montalban. It's a city that the Spaniards didn't find, because the residents abandoned it before the Spaniards found it, which is probably why it's still kind of put together. It wasn't burned down. I think this is no, that's not it. Never mind the trees. I don't remember what they are, except this is a cacao pod, if you've never seen one before. Okay, here's Montalban, and you can see definitely like the ziggurat shape. It still hasn't been completely restored. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's probably the size of like 5-6 football fields. And part of what we're looking at is only the temple complexes, not where residents lived. Poor people weren't allowed in temple complexes. Oh, you can also see here like the difference between the restoration and the original. The original is red, like painted red. Or dyed red versus the restoration, which doesn't have any of that color in the mortar. So like how would it originally looked? It would have all been red. It's a really cool city, or sacred temple complex, I should say, right?
Is that Oaxaca below?
It is. It is. So this is like 3 miles from Oaxaca City. I mean, Oaxaca, whatever, right? And then plenty of plinth carvings in Montalban, both outside and in the museum. Here's the famous ball court. If you know anything about Mixtec Mayan people, they played this ball game. And not sure that human sacrifice happened here, but if you won the ball game, you died. That was your prize for winning. It seemed to be that there was like a rubber ball, like not vulcanized rubber, but just latex, like a 4 or 5 pound ball. And you could only hit it with your shoulders, your hips, and your elbows. And you had to knock it through a hoop mounted like 15 feet above the ground, usually carved down a stone. And you would play until somebody did that, which might have been 3 or 4 days. And then the captain of the winning team may be sacrificed to Quetzalcoatl.
The Quidditch.
It's kind of like Quidditch. Of course, you know, you've probably heard on National Geographic, oh, look, people were getting like brain surgery a long time ago in the New World. Yeah, that bears out, right? Those are like brain surgeon boreholes in people's dug up remains. Again, totally different kind of carving, like amalgams of animals and feather headdresses, and these represent part of the Mixtec, the Mayan, the Nahuatl pantheon. Again, still completely at Monte Alban. Sorry for the food pictures. Here's a guy, right, painting a mural in real time. This was like on October the 30th. So outside his shop getting ready, right? It's stenciling, and now you can see him coloring in the bats and the bones and things like that. So maybe he's going to paint over it the next day. I don't know. Old Spanish aqueduct from colonial, and now it's just a park. Here's a cemetery not on All Saints Eve or the 1st. This is like on the 30th. So people are not in attendance yet, but again, you're seeing the marigolds and the chrysanthemums and decorated graves, and maybe they're swept out. But you don't keep vigil over the cemetery until November, like till Halloween, November 1st, right? And that's where you would literally stay up all night at the grave, and you would drink some mezcal, or you would pour some out. And I'll sort of show you what that's like toward the end. Really different than you might think. Again, I just was overwhelmed with how much art there was of what I perceived to be like a high quality and compelling and beautiful, and people aren't stopping to look. This is where they live. There you see the Quetzalcoatl, right? Who helps guide you, helps guide the ancestors back as well. This is that particular garden they allowed you to go to a little bit of, like really small, and I had to wait a long time to get in, and they only let you in twice a day. But I think because the cacti are so old and people are prone to like stealing them and cutting them down, they're pretty selective. Okay. They had on the Zocalo like an exhibition of the different ways of making ofrendas. So that's kind of what you're seeing now. Here's the carving workshop where they're making these different figures out of the copal. And there they are smoking the copal, like that's the incense that you're smelling. And these are just some of their items. But the again, the degree of detail, I made that one, so it looks really different from that one, right? And the degree of detail is just like breathtaking. And the precision of those tiny brush strokes make those cost. I mean, that one was probably like, to give you an idea, like $900.
How large was it?
I probably stood that tall. Is that Pozole? Maybe. This was a museum that had sand paintings in it. It was totally taken over. They would have choirs there in the evening, just walking down the streets, right? These are people getting their makeup done for either a spontaneous parade or just to walk around. And usually it's skulls. Here we are at a graveyard on the night, right? And so you can see there's a lot of candles, there's a lot of flowers, people keeping vigil. They've got their flower decorations. You might think this is really somber. And from the grave to the carnival is like 60 yards. And when I say carnival, I mean like there's rides and there's people hawking food. And I mean, of course, if you're going to keep vigil, you need sustenance, but like, it's not just somber. Like you go play, you come back. There's stuff for your kids to do. Everybody's got to eat. There's people with art booths. Like, this is like 11 p.m. So it's not like this, oh, very sober and quiet. Like, it's life. There's vigil, and it's not kept separate from enjoyment or food. Yeah.
The celebration is, I feel it's been one of the best part of the Episcopal church.
Well,
It's a celebration of life
yeah.
that we're known for.
But I would say our funerals, and I would say, are probably the best of any Christian denomination I've been to. I think so. They're honoring and they're dignified. And when do you get a fun element? You get a fun element at the eulogy, but not in the liturgy. Does that make sense? And so what would be interesting, right? Because we actually kind of have two places that have literal remains, the memorial garden and the columbarium, is that you've got, just think through this, you'd have marigolds and chrysanthemums and candles, and you might have like food that the departed enjoyed, and you might have some mezcal, or you might have like some of those hanging flags. And then you'd have a band in here, right, making traditional food, and you'd kind of like parade up and down the hallway, and that's how you'd keep vigil. Like that close and in that proximity.
There's a decibel level.
There is. Yeah, it actually would be kind of interesting to have Dia de los Muertos that way, right? You can't compete with Halloween, but maybe on All Saints Eve, the evening of All Saints, since we've got two places, it'd be interesting to invite people to like a lively All Saints where you remember somberly, but also with enjoyment, and you eat and you're together, and there's raucous music and some crazy costumes.
Yeah, come from Scottish heritage, the Celtic people, they do, like we, after each of my ancestors passed, they would do a traditional somber Catholic funeral or whatever, but then afterwards we'd have a Celtic wake,
That's it.
which is the big celebration of life, and it is loud and it's fun, and you're celebrating that person's life. and crazy stories that but yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So make sure Obama was also a cockroach, and so nobody gets away.
Being it Saturday this year and All Saints is Sunday.
Could do it Sunday night. It'll be pretty fun. Yep, so it took about 40 minutes, and I'm just gonna tell you, I got the best look in the whole group. Now, you may not like it, but the quality of that was better than anybody else's. I'm just gonna say, and boy, I was sad to wash it off, because it's pretty good. There's my little makeup artist. What did it cost? $20? Cost $20. There's Pan de Muerto. And you can see that these are meant to be like bones. Sometimes you'd see two nubs here, right, to emphasize the bones, but it's crossed bones. And sometimes there's like a little head on top. That one was like from a exclusive bakery. It was really, really good. I've made it at home. These are all videos of parades. This is like an incredible region. So what you're going to see now is just 30 minutes away. It's Hirve del Agua, so it's a calcified quote unquote waterfall. There's two of these in the world. One is near Oaxaca, the other is in Pamukkale if you've been to Turkey. It's not a real waterfall, it's water dripping, so it's an outdoor stalactite. And yeah, you can go swimming in it if you choose. It's brisk and really nice. Don't approach the abyss for your safety. But if you've been in a cave before, right, you call that bacon, or you call that like a stalactite. And again, it's outside, and that's probably 80, 90 feet tall. So this was probably one of my favorite parts of the trip, actually, because it was just, who's been to somewhere like that?
Do they know how old it is?
No, and sadly, people are probably ruining it with all of their like oils and stuff that they get in that water. And look, I'm doing it too. But absolutely gorgeous. This is what it looks like up close, right? So you can see it's just limestone that's dripping, and it calcifies as it drips. Some areas are for swimming, some aren't, right? Volcanic activity, da 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 da. Couple old petroglyphs that are in there. Okay, here they are making mezcal. So they take like the whole agave, and there's like 50 kinds, and it kind of doesn't matter. Like different producers will use only one, or some will use different kinds. And they pull up the roots and then they burn it. There's some example of the different agaves. So there they are. They pull up the roots. They smash them with a millstone. Probably a donkey pulls that now, not a human. Then they put them in these big fermenting jars. And once they've fermented, there's your mezcal. Really different from tequila, which you can make like a lot of tequila in like 12 hours. You have to let this sit for a while, and you get the smoky taste because it's been. Has anybody had mezcal before?
So mezcal is not distilled, tequila is distilled. I visited
That's it.
in Yucatan. So yeah, so tequila is distilled.
And I think people have weird reactions to tequila. That's what you hear, right? But maybe not to mezcal, but they say it's more mind-opening. I don't know what that means. Oh, that's the biggest tree in the world. That's El Tule. It's a cypress tree, and it's also like, it's like 15 minutes from Oaxaca. So there, I mean, like it's bigger than the general Sherman tree in girth, not in height, but I mean, it's ridiculously huge.
Is there an age to it?
I want to say it's like 1,000 years old, and you have to stay pretty far away from it. Like there's there's like a fence around it. So you're seeing me zoom in with my camera, but I mean, there's that fence. Like,
Is that a band?
no, it's a cypress tree. Okay, that's a Oaxacan ice cream, which is made from crushed ice, and this is made from Oaxacan cheese. And it was awesome. It was incredibly great. A white pozole, really great. There's the ball hoop from the ball game. Now, because on my way back, it was going to be the same expense to come straight back as it was to spend a couple of days in Cancun. So I went to Cancun, which I hate Cancun, so that I could go to Chichen Itza, Kobe, and let's see the other one, Tulum. So this is Chichen Itza, right? One of the more famous ones, right? A lot of death there, and you can see the dragon heads. I wish the video was working, but what I wanted to show that's kind of cool is, maybe it's not this one. Oh yeah, it is. 2 days a year on the spring and vernal equinox, like within a day or two of those, the way the sun goes, this makes a shadow that looks like a serpent. Has anybody been here before? So it makes a serpent that you can only see 2 days a year, because Quetzalcoatl is a snake, and it means flying snake. It's a particular bird. The quetzal is like a bird with long feathers, and the shadow of it looks like a snake. And so you can only see the snake on Chichen Itza twice a year. And the video that is not showing is if you go like, hey, really loud, the echo changes your voice to the sound of the quetzal. Like that's real. It's super cool. Bishop Monterosa loves to talk about that. These are cenotes, which are like essentially like sinkholes into an aquifer that you can go swim in. They're really great. Some of them are bigger than others. The opening's bigger than others. They're fresh. Yeah, really nice. This is Tulum, which is right on the coast, old Mayan city. This is Kobe, which is bigger than Tulum. These ziggurats are bigger than the ones at Chichen Itza and significantly older. A lot of people don't go there because it's like annoyingly out of the way. But again, these are just like huge Mayan cities, and you're seeing the ball pits. This is my travel group of 16 people from literally all over the world: England, Australia, several Americans. Actually, mostly England and Australia. I think those are the other countries. That was our full thing. That's, oh, here we are in our makeup. Yeah, mine was the best. Sorry, it just was. Okay, I think that's what I was going to share from my trip. So now I've got a few minutes if you got questions or comments.
In the regular pictures with all the murals.
Yeah.
you see a lot of birds.
Yeah.
Did you see a lot of real birds?
Not in Oaxaca City, probably because it's too densely populated. I mean, people love to keep loros as pets, right? The loro is like a little parakeet, and people love to have those all over Mexico. That I hear them, I think so. Maybe I wasn't paying attention, but I don't believe I ever saw a quetzal. I don't think I did. What else are you wondering?
So how strongly is the Catholic Church tolerates or celebrates
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of like I said, I think what they've done is they've kind of baptized it by calling it All Saints Day, All Souls Day. So like that's a thing. And then like how strong is a really great question. I think you'll find ofrendas in the churches, depending, and it probably, like all places, depends on the congregation and the clergy. You know, like I hate to say that, but I think that's right. I don't think you'll find mezcal in most churches. I don't think you will. And I don't think you necessarily need that to celebrate the holiday, though it is very, very commonplace that at a gravesite and at a ofrenda there is mezcal. And like there's not tequila and there's not whiskey. Like it's mezcal or there's not anything, if that makes sense. There's not wine. Yeah, and that just seems to be one of the things.
So the culture of the Aboriginals is very prominent. I mean, it seems so in the imagery.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, I think to your question, you're asking about the relationship with the church to the community and how that's changed over and through colonization and what you come to eventually.
I mean, I think it's a really interesting blend of some Western values, right? And some Western architecture that's totally bedizened in this like indigenous way of doing things as well. I mean, I think what you could say is if you came from a Catholic perspective, you would say, oh, what a neat way to do All Saints Day. But if you were indigenous, you would say, this is how we honor our ancestors, right? And it's not that like those are competing narratives, but they sure could be, right? So I think like from the Catholic perspective, it's an indigenous way of doing All Saints. And from an indigenous perspective, this is the indigenous way of honoring our ancestors, whether the church likes it or not. And like one of the parades I went to that's very famous, it always has like a cast of characters, and you all start in a square, and there's like at least 2 marching bands that come and compete, and the winning band takes you in procession. Boy, they were competing so long, we just went home. I mean, it was like an hour and a half, and they were still competing. But like there's always a doctor and like a young person and like a sick person, like maybe gets healed in this play that we didn't see because we left while the band was competing still. And like the costumes were wild, like provocative. Like there were people dressed as bishops carrying crosses that had like werewolves on them, which is strange, right? I mean, again, like in some ways, like a social commentary. And then there would be really traditional kinds of just skull and bones kinds of things. So there was like all kinds of things to see and just kind of.
Did you meet any of the clergy?
No. You know, what's interesting is Catholic churches are open all the time, but in general, you only see the clergy if they're working. So they're not like hanging out for you to talk to, and like, where are the clergy offices? Couldn't tell you, right? So I would have had to like grab somebody after a mass or like on their way to a confessional booth, but I sure wished I had. My Spanish isn't great. Like I speak Spanish like a 4-year-old that's had a stroke. Like I know some things, but I mean, I'm serious about that, right? Like, I don't have an omnibus vocabulary. Like, I have what I've learned and I can understand much better than I can speak, as it is with all foreign languages. But conversing with a clergy person, I don't know.
So it sounds like we try to meld the two cultures together, and it's really separate.
I think from the Spanish perspective, that's what they did. From the
Yeah,
indigenous perspective, I think it's like, call it what you want, we're gonna do
Right.
this. Christine?
But it's just amazing that this is what they do and this is how they do it. And the rest, the tourists are just observers. It's not for that, purpose.
What I appreciate about the trip I went on is that they're very open to observers. Like, they don't mind practicing their piety in front of you. Which says something to me, because usually we're like, well, I want to pray in public, I don't want to offend anybody. Like, no, this is like my piety. I get to be me. And if you don't like it, don't watch. I mean, like, it's sort of interesting that way. And what I would say, like, particularly as a clergy person that I want to come back to, is I think this offers a corrective to the way we view life and death that we could really use. That death isn't final, right? And that death is also a part of life. That, and in some ways, like, they bring out the skeleton. Actually, do you know the origin of the skeleton? It's about 100 years old, and it came from Latin American, like from the communist movement in South America, Latin America, which is trying to say, like, you Spaniards rule and you're rich and you tell us what to do, but we all have the same bones. So it was a symbol of common humanity, the bones, not a symbol of like freaky narcos activity. I don't know if you know this, but like about 10 years ago, narcos were doing this when they murdered people. They were like being the harbingers of death, which is not it. Like, the goal was to say, we all have the same bones. Like the Episcopal, the prayer book says, you've made of one blood all the peoples of the earth. I mean, that's the goal of the bones, is to say, like, in God's economy, we are all the same. So wearing the bones was a political protest against hierarchical rule. And we just think it's about gore. But I mean, it's sort of interesting to think through that, right? The commonality of death, like, you're all going to die. And there's a carnival right here. I mean, that's fascinating to think through, right? We would call it irreverent. They call it life, which would be really interesting. I mean, if you think about it, right? A lot of times we do a funeral and then the reception is a little more lighthearted. But imagine the reception, you play bingo. I mean, that's what this would be like, right? In that you don't have like dour food, you have like fiesta food. And you don't like listen to like Chopin, nothing against Chopin. You listen to something that's loud and vibrant. And you can go from one to the other, because that's how we live. I mean, I just found that really, really interesting. Really interesting. And like, there's this other interesting thing that all the research I've read says, sometimes when somebody dies, we don't want to talk about the dead person because we don't want to bring up pain. But since they're not gone, it's natural to talk about the dead person. And most people, Americans included, want to talk about their loved one. They don't want to not be able to talk about the person they've spent their life with or their dead child, right? Like, they want to be able to engage in all the aspects of life. Yeah.
I think we as Christians have a lot to learn from the reality of relationship as well. We've fallen such a transactional understanding of faith that these cultures really understand both the nature of relationship with those that have gone past us, and it's one that still influences our lives. And I think that if we can really grasp that the ancestors and the people that come before us have a relationship, and this, if you ever heard Mike have a sermon, this is what he, at a funeral, that's what he's saying. He's saying these people influence our lives and they need to continue influencing our lives. But that's really what these celebrations are about. It's about they are still here and they can influence things like crops and weather. And I mean, ancient cultures had a different understanding about how we relate to those that come before us and how we will relate to those that come after us. And I actually think it's more appropriately incarnational than Christian. Like, I mean, I think that, not to try to appropriate, I actually think it's more theologically appropriate with the way we tell our story.
I'm probably not gonna get this right, but I know that like in general, there's a strong fear of appropriation, which is like, I don't want to take your stuff and just take it. But there is a beautiful tradition of syncretism, which is what you're doing has so much value. I want it. And yes, I'm going to use it in my native tongue and I want it. And that's, I think, the difference between appropriation and syncretism is the criterion of respect. But I'm probably more likely to appropriate than somebody who's standoffish, but I do it from a standpoint of that's valuable and my life is less complete without that, which is why we have prayer wheels. You could call that appropriative. I just think there's value in it. And I'm not going to do the sacred symbol Om because that's not my native speak. But the idea of putting our intentions and prayers into motion is valuable because it's not just mine, it's everything in the jar. I mean, where do you think the rosary came from? Islamic prayer beads. Where'd the Christmas tree come from? It came from, right? A fertility symbol in the middle of the winter. And I love a Christmas tree. It's beautiful. You do too. So I think the question is, do we just take it or can we say this is what it means originally and we want to transfer that meaning into our system? I think that's what makes the difference between appropriation and syncretism. Yeah, Jim.
If you spend a lot of time among the Latino community, which I have done, you realize that much of what they do with the ofrendas is that they paint the skeletons and dress them up in fancy gowns and that kind of thing to incorporate this notion of death being part of life and to actually make fun of the scariness of death, to make fun of death as trying to frighten us into behaving or into fearing or into some other sort of negative sensation or negative ideation. And they do this, and I see the ofrenda that you have up here. They do this to make fun of death. And you may have already covered this.
Yeah, and I want to be really clear that like most Latin people have syncretized Dia de los Muertos because it's not Latin. It's indigenous Nahuatl. Does that make sense? So you will not see a mariachi band in Oaxaca unless it's for tourists. You won't. You'll see the marching band. And that's not wrong. It's just different, right? It's just different. Okay, I better get dressed for church.
All right. You did say you felt safe there?
I felt incredibly safe. I would take my family